Yellowstone Lake lay open like a held breath. Choker stood at its edge, boots planted in cold sand, shoulders loose, arm cocked. He watched the surface, how it pretended to be endless, how it accepted the sky without complaint. Then he threw. The stone skipped once, twice, 5 times, each touch a sharp insult. The lake flinched and healed itself instantly, swallowing the violence without a sound. He threw another, harder, not angry, precise, as if the force might carve something permanent into the morning. Birds lifted from the far reeds in a ragged line, wings catching early light. Elk moved cautiously down the opposite bank, steam blooming from their mouths. The world was waking up, careful and ancient, and Choker kept breaking its calm just to prove that he could. Behind him, far enough to feel distant, even without the curve of the shore, his father stood by a black SUV with the boot open. Adam Kind moved slowly, deliberately, as if speed were something beneath him. The men around him were dressed well, coats too expensive for the hour, shoes unsuited for mud. Their posture betrayed them. They were alert, waiting. Adam did not look at Choker. He never did during these moments. The other men did. Brief glances, quick checks, as if Choker were a variable that might suddenly turn into a problem, as if silence could move. Choker noticed everything. He always did. He picked another stone, heavier this time, feeling the veins rise along the back of his hand, blue and defined like exposed wiring. His lashes cast long shadows on his cheeks when he blinked. His eyes brown, deep, almost gentle, stayed on the lake. He knew what was in the boot. Metal, oil, paperwork that turned distance into profit. Words that killed more efficiently than bullets ever could. His blood warmed at the thought, not with rage, but with exclusion. He wasn't angry that it was happening. He was angry that it was happening without him. Again. He threw the stone. It hit wrong, sank immediately. Good, he thought. Some things shouldn't skip. Adam's voice carried faintly across the water. Calm, controlled. A man who never rushed because the world always waited for him. Choker had inherited none of the money and all of the patience. Growing up, Choker learned early how to disappear. Not literally. He was too tall for that, too noticeable when still, but socially. He learned where to stand so people forgot he was there, how to listen without reacting, how to speak only when the words mattered, and even then, sparingly. Silence became his native language. People misread it. They always did. Some thought him cold. Others thought him dangerous. A few sensed warmth beneath it and backed away anyway, unsettled by the combination. He had learned not to correct them. They were immigrants wherever they went. America, Europe, places that smiled politely and never quite opened their doors. Always foreign enough to be watched, never foreign enough to be excused. Adam carried it like armor. Choker carried it like a shadow. There was no home, only temporary coordinates. The lake smelled faintly metallic in the cold air. Clean, sharp, like a gun that had never been fired, but always could be. The scent pulled at something old in him. Workshops, crates, his father's hands cleaning weapons with almost reverent care. Not love, precision. Choker breathed it in without flinching. He skipped another stone. This one danced beautifully. 10, maybe 12 touches. A small miracle of violence. He almost smiled. Adam shifted his stance. One of the men said something. Too quiet to hear. Another glanced at Choker again. Longer this time. Measuring distance. Calculating risk. Choker did not turn around. He knew the rules. He knew the boundaries. He knew exactly how invisible he was meant to be. Still, the exclusion burned. Not hot, not wild, but steady. Like an engine left running too long. He thought of all the places he had stood like this. On edges, on borders, watching deals, watching people, Never invited in, never fully cast out. A ghost with a pulse. He had learned to live alone even when surrounded. Learned that belonging was not something you were given, but something you sometimes refused. The birds passed overhead again, their shadows sliding across the water. The animals drank, the lake endured. Choker pocketed the last stone and finally turned his head, not toward his father, but just enough that the men could see his face clearly. The lashes, the eyes, the calm. They stiffened. Adam did not look. That was fine. Choker faced the lake once more, hands relaxed at his sides, posture easy, presence heavy, warm, intimidating, silent. The world continued. The deal would close, and Choker would remain exactly where he had always been. Seen, unseen, waiting. Choker, Adam's voice cut across the lake, clean and unhurried. Not loud. It didn't need to be. Choker didn't turn right away. Choker, Adam said again. Eyes down now, reading from a thin piece of paper, as if the name were an item on a list. The other men were already pulling away, tires whispering over gravel. The SUV doors closing with a soft finality. Business leaving the body. Choker finally looked back. Sir? Adam folded the paper once, then again. Precise creases. He watched the last car disappear before reaching into his coat. You hungry? Adam asked. The question landed flat. Not concern, not kindness. Administration. I could eat, Choker said. Adam nodded, as if confirming something he already knew. He flicked the lighter open. The flame caught immediately, well maintained. He held the paper over it, eyes steady, watching the corner blacken, curl, surrender. Ash dropped onto the dirt between his shoes. You always say that, Adam said. The paper burned down to his fingers. He let it go before it touched his skin, grounded it with his shoe. Food here is mediocre, Adam continued, but service is efficient. That matters. Choker said nothing. Adam glanced at him then, not fully, just enough to register posture, distance, compliance. You still skipping stones like a child. They skip, Choker replied. I don't. A pause, barely perceptible. Careful, Adam said mildly. You're getting particular with your words again. Choker exhaled through his nose. Habit. Adam reached the car, but didn't open it. He adjusted his cuff instead. Slow movements. Ownership of time. Burger, Adam said. Or something lighter. Burger's fine. Of course it is. Adam's mouth twitched. Not a smile. You never cared what it did to you. Only that it filled space. Choker's jaw tightened. He kept his gaze forward. Adam finally opened the driver's door. Get in. Choker didn't move immediately. Adam waited. When Choker hesitated, just a fraction too long, Adam slid into the car and shut the door. Only then did Choker follow, taking the passenger seat. The smell hit him before the door fully closed. New fabric, synthetic, clean plastic, and something sweet dry beneath it. Money. He glanced back. A large bag sat on the back seat. Black, unbranded. Too deliberate to be luggage. That wasn't there earlier, Choker said. Adam started the engine. You notice everything except when it matters. Silence stretched as the car rolled forward. Tires crunching softly. Where are we eating? Choker asked. Adam pulled onto the road, eyes forward. Same place. You don't like that place. I don't dislike it, Adam corrected. I find it predictable. Choker nodded once. Predictable food for unpredictable mornings. Adam finally looked at him then. Not warmth, not pride, assessment, duty. You're learning, Adam said. Slowly. Choker shifted in his seat. What's in the bag? Adam's fingers tightened slightly on the wheel. You ask questions like you earn answers. I didn't ask for details. No, Adam agreed. You asked for proximity. Another pause. Adam changed lanes. You should eat more, Adam said. You're getting lean again. I'm fine. You always are. Adam's tone softened just enough to be unsettling. Until you are not. They drove in silence for a moment. Pines passed. Light filtered in strips across the dashboard. Sir, Choker said carefully, Yes, you shouted earlier. Adam raised an eyebrow. Did I? You don't usually. Adam considered this. The paper was distracting. Choker glanced at his hands, veins still raised. You burned it. Yes. Why not shred it later? Adam smiled thinly. Because later invites memory. Choker absorbed that. They slowed near a turnout. Adam signaled, smooth and unhurried. You know, Adam said, most sons would be curious, emotional, proud even. Choker didn't look at him. Most fathers would say son. Adam's jaw set. Not angry, controlled. You will call me sir, Adam said, or you will call me nothing. Yes, sir. Adam nodded, satisfied. Good. They pulled into the parking lot. Adam parked but didn't turn off the engine immediately. You paused back there, Adam said, eyes still forward. When I told you to get in, I was thinking about. Choker met his gaze this time. Whether you want me here. Adam studied him for a long moment. Then he shut off the engine. I don't want, Adam said evenly. I assign. He opened his door and stepped out. Choker followed, eyes flicking once more to the bag in the back seat. The smell lingered, faint but unmistakable. As he closed his door, Adam spoke again, quiet, precise. Don't touch what isn't yours, he said. And don't ask twice. Choker nodded. Understood, sir. Adam walked ahead toward the diner, suit worn but impeccable, posture unbothered by the morning. Choker followed a step behind, invisible by design, blood steady, hunger unresolved. The diner smelled like old grease and fresh coffee. A place that existed only because people kept passing through. The booths were vinyl, cracked and worn. Adam chose one without asking. Back to the wall, eyes already mapping exits. Choker slid in opposite him. The waitress approached like she was apologizing for the space she took up. She was thin, blonde hair pulled back without care, shoulders folding inward as if gravity favored her too much. Her posture suggested she was always halfway to leaving. The badge on her chest read Turkish in black letters, slightly crooked. Morning, she said. Her voice carried uncertainty, like she was checking whether it was allowed. Her eyes, though, were warm, brown, present. Can I get you started? Choker noticed her eyes first. He always did with people like that. Ones who looked as if they were trying not to be noticed, but still hoped to be seen. He spoke before Adam could. Turkish, he said, gentle, careful. That's your name? She glanced down at the badge, then back up. A small, almost embarrassed smile. Sort of. My parents are from Turkey. It's, well, not my real name, but the people I work with can pronounce it. Choker nodded slowly. Makes sense. Adam watched the exchange without expression, head tilted slightly, as if observing a foreign mechanism. I'll have 4 eggs, Adam said, cutting cleanly through the moment. Runny, medium toast, black coffee. He didn't look at the waitress when he spoke. He looked at Choker. And the same for him. Turkish blinked, then nodded quietly. Okay, yeah, sure. She scribbled it down, pen shaking just slightly. Before leaving, she looked at Choker again. There was concern there, and something else. Soft, tentative interest. The kind that asked nothing but hoped anyway. Choker met her eyes, held them, said nothing. She turned and walked away. The food came quickly. Plates slid onto the table with practiced indifference. Steam rose, coffee poured. The world narrowed to porcelain and sound. They ate in silence. Adam broke toast with precision. Yolks bled slowly, controlled. He wiped his mouth once with a napkin, folded it neatly. Choker ate slower, mind elsewhere, aware of the waitress moving in his peripheral vision, aware of his father's presence pressing the air down. When the plates were cleared, Adam placed his hands on the table and leaned back slightly. High or low? He asked. Choker didn't respond. Adam waited. Silence stretched. Not empty, but heavy, deliberate. Choker kept his gaze on the table, jaw set. Adam smiled faintly. He stood, pulled out his wallet from his inside jacket pocket, honored the bill, not a penny over, and placed it back in his pocket. No tip, Adam said. Interesting choice. They walked towards the door. Outside, the cold bit again. Adam stopped just long enough to look at Choker. You had power there, Adam said calmly. A simple answer would have changed the outcome. You chose silence. Choker met his eyes, unwavering. I chose not to be controlled. Adam studied him for a moment, then nodded once. Convince yourself of that, he said, opening the car door. Choker followed, the bell from the diner ringing once behind them. Sharp, brief, already forgotten. Adam smoked on the jet. Not discreetly, not apologetically. The cigarette burned between his fingers, as if the law of altitude did not apply to him. Smoke gathered lazily near the ceiling, thin and blue. A private rebellion contained within leather seats and muted engines. Choker had only ever known one man who did that. His father. Adam sat opposite him, papers spread neatly across the table, moving through them with unhurried efficiency. Contracts, figures, names that carried weight in rooms Choker had never been invited into. He worked the way other men breathed, without effort, without pause. Casual but never careless. You want to eat? Adam asked, eyes still on the page. I'm fine, Choker said. Adam didn't look up. Eggs, he said instead, pressing a button. Choker didn't argue. He rarely did. The black bag sat 3 seats down, strapped in like a quiet passenger. Same place it had been since the morning. Same deliberate presence. Choker's eyes found it without effort, drawn by the same instinct that always led him to weapons, exits, truths. No one volunteered. The stewardess approached with practiced ease. She smiled at Adam first. Mr. Kind, she said warmly. Then she turned to Choker. Master Kind. The familiarity unsettled him more than the title. She knew them. Not personally, but enough. Enough to not ask questions. enough to pretend this was normal. Thank you, Adam said, dismissing her with a nod. As she left, Choker spoke quietly. Who are we meeting? Adam flipped a page. Someone important. No pause, no emphasis, as if he'd said a tailor or an accountant. Choker absorbed it, let it settle. In Cyprus. Yes, Thetis is waiting there as well. The engines hummed, smoke thinned. Eggs arrived mid-flight, steaming improbably on porcelain. Adam ate. Choker ate. The bag watched. Cyprus greeted them with heat and familiarity. The house, situated on the northern coastline of the peninsula, waited the same way it always did. White stone, clean lines, overlooking water that pretended innocence. Choker had been here too many times for it to feel foreign. Never enough for it to feel like home. Dinner was eggs again. Runny. Predictable. That night, Choker lay awake. Purpose circled him like a vulture. Freedom, like an open wound. He thought of silence, of power, of all the ways he had been shaped by a mission, of all the moments where he had stood just outside the frame, watching decisions carve the world into something sharp. He stood. Adam slept deeply. He always did. The sleep of men who believed the world would wait for them. Choker moved quietly. The bag was heavier than he expected. Not just with weight, but with implication. Money had a gravity of its own. He understood that taking it was not theft. It was a declaration. His father could be killed for this. His father would kill him for this. The thought didn't trouble him. Before leaving, he paused at the desk, picked up the lighter. 18-karat gold, warm in his palm. The engraving caught the low light. The Archangel Raphael etched finely, eternally in motion. Healing, protection. Irony was something Adam appreciated. Choker slipped it into his pocket, returning with a small stone to take the lighter's place. Outside, the night was still. The dock lay quiet, boards creaking softly as he approached. Thetis rocked gently, tethered, obedient. Choker stopped at the edge, the bag heavy at his side, the lighter warm against his leg. For the first time, the silence felt like his choice. Thetis was not beautiful in the way people meant when they said the word. She did not seduce the eye. She did not gleam. She endured. A catamaran with twin hulls like steady shoulders, scarred where ropes had bitten too hard, paint dulled by years of salt and sun. Her deck was wide and honest, built for balance rather than speed. Nothing decorative, nothing wasted. The kind of vessel that forgave mistakes once, but never twice. Choker loved her for that. His father had taught him to sail her with a silence sharper than shouting, standing behind him, always behind him, eyes critical, hands folded as if patience were something he had invented. Instructions came late, often after failure, and praise never came at all. Too slow, too loose, again. Choker learned the wind, not by encouragement, but by consequence. He learned to read the water the way one reads a face that might strike. The tilt of canvas, the complaint of rope, the subtle change in pressure beneath his boots. He learned restraint, learned that control was not forced, but listening longer than anyone else. When his father finally stepped off the deck one afternoon, sun low, cigarette burning down to the filter, he said only, "You won't embarrass me." It was the closest thing to approval Choker had ever known. Now, years later, Thetis cut cleanly through the night. The sea was dark and patient, its surface broken only by moonlight and the soft insistence of the hulls. Choker stood at the helm alone, the bag secured below, its weight pressing up through the deck like a second heartbeat. The wind filled the sails gently, almost kindly, as if it too understood the nature of quiet theft. Above him, the sky was brutal in its beauty. Stars scattered recklessly, too many to count, too distant to touch. He tilted his head back and let them stare down at him, ancient and indifferent. Somewhere inside his chest, something ached, not sharply, but with the dull persistence of a truth long ignored. He wished he could dream, not in the metaphorical sense, not ambition or hope. He meant sleep, the surrender of it, the way people closed their eyes and left. Choker never left. Even unconscious, he stayed alert, drifting only shallowly, surfacing at the slightest change. His mind never loosened its grip. Dreams required trust. He did not have it. Thetis moved steadily, obedient beneath his hands. He adjusted her course with small, precise movements, the way his father had taught him, the way his father had demanded. By the time the Turkish coast emerged, dark land against darker sky, Choker felt the familiar tightening in his chest. Arrival always did this to him. Not relief. Readiness. Beran was already waiting. He stood on the shore as if he owned it. Not expensively, not arrogantly, but with the ease of a man who had long ago decided the world would make room for him. He was younger than Adam Kind by a margin that mattered only to vanity. Hair silvering at the temples, smile sharp with humor he deployed like a shield. Beran had always believed himself the smartest in the room, and more often than not, he was. Adam had allowed it, encouraged it even. Intelligence was useful when it was loyal. Humor made it palatable. Choker brought Thetis in cleanly. Lines tossed and caught without ceremony. Before his boots even touched the sand, Beran's voice carried across the water. "You're late," he said brightly. I was beginning to feel stood up. Choker didn't respond. Beran laughed at his own joke and stepped closer, extending his hand towards the deck. "I'll take that." Choker lifted the bag instead and held it. Their eyes met. The humor slipped just slightly, enough for something harder to show through. Beran straightened, hand lingering in the air before dropping it back to his side. "Still charming," he said lightly. Choker stepped past him onto the shore, close enough that Beran could feel the weight of his presence. "Still talking too much?" Beran smiled again. Thinner this time. "Ah, there he is." They drove before the sun rose. The car smelled faintly of dust and old cigarettes. The city stirred reluctantly around them. Vendors setting out crates, shutters groaning open, a woman sweeping her doorstep with slow devotion. The air was cool, carrying the promise of heat that would come later, inevitably, like consequence. Choker sat in the back, the bag wedged securely beneath his legs. His posture was relaxed, but nothing about him was at ease. Beran talked about traffic, about a neighbor who played music too loudly, about a woman who had left him and taken the wrong jacket. The stories were banal, carefully so, threaded with self-deprecation and humor meant to disarm. Every few minutes, his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "So," Biran said, adjusting the radio, "you sleeping at all these days?" Choker didn't answer. "I never could," Biran continued cheerfully. "Mind won't shut up. Inherited that from your father, I think. Brilliant man. Terrible for one's inner peace." Silence. Biran chuckled. "You know, you could respond. I don't bite." Choker's voice was low when it came. "You talk because you're afraid of quiet." Biran glanced at him, surprised despite himself. Then he laughed, genuinely this time. "Still observant. That hasn't changed." The safe house waited on the outskirts of the city, a tired apartment block with peeling paint and windows that watched without curiosity. Inside, the air was stale, the furniture mismatched, the walls bearing the ghosts of other men who had passed through and never stayed. Biran gestured toward a chair. "Sit. Rest. I'll keep the bag safe." Choker didn't move. "No," he said simply. Biran sighed, rubbing his temple. "You really are his son." Choker met his gaze. "And you really think reminding me helps?" Biran's smile faded. "You're in danger," he said quietly. "You know that. And you know what Adam will do when he finds out." Choker's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. Just a fraction. Not fear. Something closer to grief. "I know," he said, "better than you do." Biran studied him then, not as an asset, not as a problem, but as something more fragile than he had expected. "We've worked together a long time," Biran said gently. "I know your father." Choker's mouth curved, humorless. "That's not the same as knowing me." Silence settled between them. thick and unspoken. Outside, the city continued waking, voices rising, life insisting. Choka remained standing, the bag still beneath him, his loyalty unclear even to himself. The door closed behind Biran with a soft, unceremonious click. Choka locked it immediately. The sound of the deadbolt twisting home was small but satisfying, a thin promise of control. He stood there a moment longer than necessary, palm still resting against the wood, listening to the apartment settle back into its tired silence. Then he turned and went to the bedroom, letting exhaustion finally claim him. Sleep came fast, but shallow. It always was. The knock tore through him like a blunt instrument, not urgent, relentless. Choker surfaced sharply, heart already awake before his eyes were. The sound repeated, steady and unapologetic, as if whoever stood on the other side had no doubt they would be answered. He moved quietly, instinct overriding irritation. The floor was cold beneath his feet. He reached the door, paused, then unlocked it. The handle turned immediately from the other side. Biran stepped in as if the door had always been his. Choker stiffened. Behind him stood a slender figure, almost folded into herself, hands clasped in front of her. She spoke softly, in English, touched with something warmer. "I brought lunch." Choker's eyes stayed on Biran. "Do you make a habit," he said evenly, "of opening doors you didn't lock?" Biran waved the question away, already moving toward the kitchen. "Markets don't wait," he said cheerfully. "You sleep like the dead, by the way, very inconvenient." He pulled plates from a cupboard, stacked them carelessly, talking all the while about crowds, about prices, about a man who tried to sell him figs that tasted of nothing. The girl followed him in silence. She wore a lilac headscarf, loosely tied, a few dark strands of hair escaping at her temples, jeans worn thin at the knees, a plain t-shirt. Her shoulders curved inwards, as if she were apologizing for existing. She did not look at Choker directly, but he felt her awareness of him, sharp and quiet. She glanced when she thought he wasn't watching. Choker exhaled through his nose. "Who is she?" The question landed hard. Biran blinked. then laughed as though genuinely surprised. "Oh, right." He frowned theatrically, tapping a finger against his temple. "What was it again?" The girl didn't help him. "Angela," Piran said finally. "She's eating with us." Choker stared at him. He stepped back to the door and locked it again. Slower this time. The sound was louder in the small space. "Mr. Kind," Piran said lightly to the girl, gesturing towards Choker. "An old friend." Choker turned. "Have you lost your mind?" he asked mildly. "Or are you just bored enough to start experimenting?" Piran grinned. "Still sharp." They sat at the small table, knees almost touching beneath it. The food was simple. Bread, rice, stewed vegetables, meant to be shared. Piran served himself generously and talked without pause, narrating his own chewing, his thoughts wandering nowhere in particular. Choker barely heard him. He watched her. Her skin was warm-toned, kissed by the sun, but not hardened by it. There was a softness to it that suggested gentler places, or perhaps just the absence of cruelty. At the base of her neck, just where the scarf dipped, was a small mole, dark, deliberate, impossibly intimate. His eyes returned to it again and again, unbidden. When she finally lifted her gaze, he met her eyes fully. They were not shy. They were distant, careful, as if she were standing very far away and measuring whether the ground between them was safe to cross. There was pain there. Not loud, not dramatic, but present, lived in. And then, inexplicably, for the briefest moment, she looked at him with something that felt like disdain. It unsettled him more than fear would have. After the meal, Piran pushed his plate away and stood. "I'll prep the next leg," he said briskly. "London gets you closer. Your father will be moving by now." Choker's jaw tightened. "I'll need your passport." "No," Choker said immediately. "I'm coming with you." Piran shook his head. "Too visible. You'll draw attention. I won't. That's the point." "How long?" "A few hours. Biran said easily. Stick to the plan. Choker hesitated, then reached into his pocket and handed over the passport. His fingers lingered a fraction too long. As Biran turned to leave, Choker's eyes flicked to the girl, still seated. Don't forget your things, Choker said flatly, gesturing towards her. Biran paused, then smiled. She can stay. Keep you company. I won't be long. The door closed before Choker could answer. Silence rushed back in. They looked at each other. If you want me to leave, she said quietly, you only have to ask. Choker frowned. Did anything I say suggest I wanted you to stay? She met his gaze steadily. Then say it directly. The confidence startled him, not in her posture, which remained small and guarded, but in her voice. Her eyes hurt. He could see that now. Leave, he began, then stopped. Angela. My name isn't Angela. He blinked. Then why did you say it was? I didn't, she replied calmly. He did. Choker frowned, searching his memory. She was right. What's your name? He asked. Ayla. He repeated it under his breath. Ayla. She stood and poured herself a glass of water. Choker thought about the girl from the diner. Why are you here? Choker asked. Why did he bring you? She shook her head. I don't know. I was picked up this morning. I wasn't told much. And Biran? My uncle knows him, she said. They worked together a long time ago. She avoided specifics with practiced ease. What's your name? She asked him gently. Mr. Kind is clearly not real. He didn't answer. Instead, he went to the bedroom and grabbed his backpack. Few clothes, necessities, everything he owned fitting easily into a small backpack. He dragged the large bag out after it, the weight of it grounding him. Where are you going? Ayla asked softly. Choker didn't look at her. Somewhere, he said, voice low and tired. That doesn't require explanation. They stood there, facing each other, the apartment holding its breath around them. Silence stretched, not empty, but weighted. Choker felt it press into his ribs, into places he usually kept sealed. He met her eyes and didn't look away, even when instinct told him to. Women had always been complicated, not because he didn't understand desire, but because it had never been allowed to exist without supervision. His father's presence had followed him everywhere. Rooms, countries, conversations. An invisible hand on the back of his neck. Women learned quickly where they stood in Adam Kind's orbit. Most left. Some stayed too long. None ever reached Choker in a way that mattered. Movement was the only constant. They never stayed anywhere long enough for intimacy to reach. Isla shifted her weight. Her fingers tightened slightly around the phone in her hand. He noticed. Of course he did. Her gaze flicked down, then back up. You keep looking at this, she said, lifting it a fraction. Do you not trust me? He answered without hesitation. No. Her mouth curved. Almost a smile. Almost a challenge. Honest. I like that. You shouldn't, he said. Each time he pressed, her eyes darkened with that same flicker of disdain he'd seen before. Quick, controlled, gone almost as soon as it appeared. It intrigued him more than softness ever could. Another moment passed. Something unspoken settled between them, fragile and reckless. Come with me, he said suddenly. She blinked. Where? Not telling. She studied his face, searching for something. Permission, perhaps, or warning. Is that meant to make me feel safe? No. A pause. Then she nodded. All right. They stepped out into the street together. The air was warmer now, the city fully awake, voices and engines weaving around them. Shouldn't we be waiting for Beran? She asked. Choker didn't slow. He has a habit of arriving after things are already ruined. She huffed softly, half a laugh. They walked with purpose. Choker squinted up at buildings as if reading something only he could see. His stride confident, measured. At one point, the weight of the bag shifted awkwardly on his shoulder. She reached out without thinking, readjusting it, her hand lingering a bit too long. Neither commented on it. They slipped into a narrow alley, the light thinning. Choker stopped abruptly. "Wait here," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "That always ends well." He ignored her and stepped into a small hookah shop. The air inside was thick and sweet. A young man behind the counter looked up, eyes sharpening immediately. A few quiet words passed between them. Judgment flickered across the man's face before he reached into the till and produced a set of keys. The keyring was distinctive, gaudy, almost childish. Choker looked at it, then at the man. The man shrugged. Outside again, they moved through more alleys until they reached an old beige car, dust-coated and tired. Choker unlocked the boot, placed the bag inside, and shut it firmly. "Get in," he said. Isla hesitated. "This looks like a bad idea." He opened the driver's door without waiting. She sighed and got into the passenger seat. The interior smelled of dust and old heat. "You know," she said carefully, "I don't know your plan, but I know Biran, and whatever was happening in that room earlier, it wasn't good." Choker started the engine. "You're very perceptive." "Occupational hazard," she replied dryly. He glanced at her then, just once. The tension between them hummed, quiet and unmistakable. "Seatbelt," he said. She fastened it, eyes never leaving his. The car pulled away, carrying them both towards something unnamed and dangerously alive. The engine coughed once, then settled into a reluctant hum. Dust lifted behind them as Choker pulled the car into the street. The steering wheel warmed beneath his palms, the suspension complaining softly with every uneven patch of road. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was attentive, like both of them were listening for the same thing and didn't quite know what it was. Isla broke it first. "You move like someone who already decided," she said, eyes forward. "That's unsettling." Choker squinted at the road, one hand resting casually on the wheel, the other braced against his thigh. "People who hesitate get corrected," By whom? By circumstance, he replied, or by worse. She turned, then rarely looked at him. You saying things like that as if they're weather, as if they just happen. They do. Isla exhaled slowly. That's convenient. He glanced at her. You think I enjoy it? I think, she said carefully, that you're very practiced at pretending you don't. A faint smile touched his mouth. Brief, involuntary. You've known me less than a day. And yet, she said, I already know you don't sleep properly. You don't answer questions you don't control. And you keep checking mirrors, even when no one is there. He adjusted the rearview mirror without looking at it. You forgot suspicious. I didn't forget, she replied lightly. I just didn't want to sound rude. You're doing fine, he replied. You asked earlier if I trusted you. Yes. I don't, he repeated. But I also don't think you're dangerous. Her brow furrowed. That's generous. No, he said. That's specific. She smiled at that, then let it fade. Piran, she said after a moment. He makes people feel like they're being included when they're actually being arranged. That's his talent. And you? She asked. What's yours? He took a corner too sharply, then steadied the car. Surviving other people's plans. She watched him for a long moment. You don't flirt, she said suddenly. He shot her a sideways look. Is that an accusation? An observation. Her lips curved slightly. You look, though, like you're trying to solve something. I'm bad at pretending, he admitted. My father didn't see the point in it. That explains a lot. Such as why you stare like you're waiting for a confession, she said. Why it irritates you when you don't get one. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. You have opinions. I've had practice not saying them. He nodded once. That, too, explains a lot. They drove on, the city thinning around them. Buildings grew lower, older. Laundry hung between windows like tired flags. Isla shifted in her seat. You still haven't told me where we're going. I won't. And if I don't want to go? He considered that. Truly. Then you would have said so already. Her eyes flicked to him again, sharp, assessing. Then that flicker returned. Disdain, yes, but not contempt. Something closer to defiance. You're very sure of yourself, she said. No, he replied quietly. I'm just used to consequences. She studied his profile, the way his lashes cast shadows, the tension he never quite released. You know, she said softly, for someone who claims not to trust people, you let me into your car remarkably easily. He didn't answer right away. The road straightened ahead of them. Trust, he finally said, isn't the same as permission. Her breath caught, just slightly. The car rattled over cobblestones. She hugged her arms loosely around herself. Earlier, she said, when you thought my name was Angela, you didn't like that. No. Why? Because names matter, he said, and because it wasn't yours. She nodded. People take mine away sometimes, or replace it. It's easier for them. I won't, he said without thinking. She looked at him again, slower this time. You already did, she murmured. You asked. Something warm and dangerous settled between them. The car slowed as Choker scanned the street ahead, eyes narrowing, focus snapping back into place. He parked without ceremony, cutting the engine. Isla lingered a moment before reaching for the door. For what it's worth, she said, voice quiet now. This still feels like a bad idea. He met her gaze, steady and unreadable. Most honest things do. Neither moved for a second longer than necessary. Then he opened his door and stepped out into the heat, leaving the tension behind him, unresolved, humming alive. The farmhouse sat low and wide against the land, as if it had grown there rather than been built. Its veranda was crowded with lush green potted plants, ferns, figs, things with broad leaves that drank the sun greedily. They spilled over one another in quiet abundance, breathing life into the heat. Between them, curled into the shade, slept a golden brown dog, old, heavy in the limbs. Its chest rose and fell with the unhurried certainty of something that trusted the world not to change too suddenly. Choker knocked once. They waited. The air smelled of earth and watered leaves. Somewhere inside, a clock ticked, slow, deliberate. Nothing. Isla shifted beside him. Before he could stop her, she raised her hand and knocked again. His fingers closed around her wrist. Too late, and a little too firmly. She looked up at him. I didn't want to be rude, she murmured.